Hi and Assalamu alaikum everyone. Today we are going to talk about one of the serious issue, and that is domestic violence, its causes and consequences. Dear audience, domestic violence is an offense and is one of the major causes for increase of crime index of the state. Domestic violence is destructive behavior in an intimate relationship where one person tries to dominate and control other in a dating or marital relationship or in cohabitation, which causes physical, psychological or sexual harm to those in that relationship. Today, in this lecture, we will try to explain the root causes of domestic violence, which includes certain risk factors such as individual, relationship, community, social, legal and political factors. These factors are responsible for domestic violence and its consequences on the victim's psychological as well as physical health in day-to-day life. My dear friends, in this lecture I will also highlight the different forms of domestic violence such as physical, psychological, emotional, sexual, verbal or economic. We'll also make an attempt to highlight the difference between healthy and unhealthy relationships. And also, we'll end this chapter by the various strategies to prevent domestic violence. My dear brothers and sisters, let me explain you what actually domestic violence is. According to Domestic Violence Act, domestic violence means harming or injuring a woman in a domestic relationship. It includes physical, sexual, verbal, emotional, and economic abuse within its ambit. The abuse under the Domestic Violence Act includes not only actual abuse but also the threat of abuse. Any harassment resulting from unlawful dowry demands to the woman or her relatives is also covered by the definition under the Domestic Violence Act. The Domestic Violence Act primarily protects wives or female life in partners from domestic violence at the hands of the husband or male live-in partner, including his relatives. Section 2A of the Domestic Violence Act 1 defines aggrieved person as a woman who is or has been in a domestic relationship with the perpetrator and who alleges to have been subject to any act of domestic violence. The Domestic Violence Act not only covers those women who or have been in a relationship with the abuser, but also covers those women who have lived together in a shared household and are related by consanguinity, marriage, or to a relationship in the nature of marriage or adoption includes mothers, sisters, or widows. Now first I will tell you the types of domestic violence. Okay. The types of domestic violence against a woman range from physical, sexual, verbal, and emotional to economic abuse. Let me explain you in briefly the different types of domestic violence. First of all, physical abuse. My dear friends, physical abuse is the most prominent visible form of domestic violence against a woman. As we all are aware with that, this type of sexual abuse we are watching on social media and other platforms. It has been defined in the Domestic Violence Act to include any act that causes bodily pain or danger to life, limb or health or development of the victim. And after that, there is sexual abuse. And according to Domestic Violence Act, sexual abuse is any abuse of sexual nature that abuses, humiliates, degrades, or otherwise violates the dignity of a woman. There are some other types of domestic violence like verbal and emotional abuse, economic abuse, and etc. etc. And we all are aware with the causes of domestic violence. What are the causes of domestic violence? There are many causes of that, my dear friends. We will particularly explain the cause of domestic violence in India. Okay. There is actually no uniform or single reason that leads to domestic violence. It's a combination of various sociological, behavioral, historical, religious, and cultural factors that lead to perpetration of domestic violence against a woman. First of all, let me discuss sociological behavioral factors. Please, थोड़ा volume कम कर दो. Yeah, thank you. The sociological, behavioral, and cultural factors includes factors like anger issues, aggressive attitude, poverty, economic hardship, difference in the stats, dominating nature, drug addiction, upbringing, and psychological instability like depression, stress, etc., among others. Neglect of conjugal responsibilities due to extramarital affairs or lack of trust also contributes to domestic violence. And what includes in historical factors? I will explain. Historical factors can be traced back to the inherent evil of patriarchy and superiority complex that has prevailed for centuries among men. And after that, there is religious factors, a subtle form of domination on women, if not direct and gory, reflected in the religious scientifications. This also contributes to perpetration of domestic violence against a woman. And some other causes like cultural factors, dowry system, which all of you know, dowry system is becoming one of the major and serious issue in our society. Dowry is a form of socio-cultural factor, but it becomes important to separately mention it because you all are well aware of that. It is because of the rampant domestic violence causes resulting from illegal demand of dowry. This was realized by the parliament also. You know, because dowry related domestic violence has been made a separate head in the scope of abuse, resulting in domestic violence under the Domestic Violence Act. After all, let's not go too much deep in that. Let me explain you the consequences of domestic violence against a woman. And I'm requesting all of you who are listening to me right here, raise your voice against domestic violence, please, because it is becoming a serious issue in our society, isn't it? Thank you. Domestic violence against a woman can cause long term and short term physical and mental harm. Please understand these consequences because today we're talking about this domestic violence. It's a becoming very serious issue in our society, very serious. So please, you understand it carefully. The domestic violence against a woman also affects the children in the family. You know it well, causing long lasting impressions on a child's vulnerable memory. The short term physical effects of violence can include minor injuries or serious conditions. I mean to say, they can include cuts, broken bones, or injuries to organs and other parts inside the body. And my dear friends, it's shameful act. It's a shameful act. Beating your wife, it's a shameful act. How one can do it? We all need to realize this fact. How it feels when our sister, when our mother will be beaten in front of us. What will the impact on children? Let me explain you. Some physical injuries are difficult or impossible to see without scans, x-rays, or other tests done by a doctor or nurse. The long emotional and verbal abuse might affect the woman's mood and children's mood in their day to day activities and might also reduce the efficiency. You know what I mean. Violence against women, including sexual or physical violence, is linked to many long term health problems. Long term mental health effects of violence against a woman can include post traumatic stress disorder, depression, or anxiety. This can further lead to problems of substance abuse and drug addiction. Sexual violence can result in irreparable injury to sexual violence and loss of self worth. And one more thing, frustration is because loss of income and various other factors have led to a surge in domestic violence cases in India during this period of lockdown. You know, in recent studies, we have found that domestic violence cases are increasing very fastly. Do you know why? Because a male partner who was a breadwinner of the family, now he lost his job and he's getting frustrated. And this is becoming a major cause of domestic violence. And in fact, in India, it is very, very common. Domestic violence is very common in India. Before conclusion, I will again request all of you, my dear brothers and sisters, the youth can change the thinking of people. We can aware people by conducting such shows, by conducting awareness programs.